Good evening, everyone. It being the allotted hour, I declare this meeting open at 6 p.m. Kaya Marman, Kaya Yoga, Kaya Bridie, Yana Nook, Nalak Kadij Winjialak Nini, Nalak Kadij Nija, Buja Bal, Wajak Nunga, Buja Nalak Nini, Kura, Nijie Burawan. The town of Bassendean acknowledges the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the region. Councillors, I would ask if you have all signed the Declaration of Civic Duty and Responsibility, noting that we have one councillor who is running a few minutes late. I will read out for the audience what that declaration is. I make this declaration in good faith and declare that I will duly, faithfully and honestly, with integrity, fulfil the duties of my office for all the people of the town of Bassendean according to the best of my judgment and ability. Apologies. Tonight we have one apology, Councillor Hayden Long, and we clearly have one councillor, Councillor Ames, who is running late. I will obviously make a note when he enters the chamber. Councillors, I'll ask if there are any declarations of interest on any item on the agenda. No? And I will ask Councillor Ames when he arrives if he also has any declarations of interest. So, announcements. It is recognised that there are members of the public in the gallery here with a particular interest in agenda items 12.2 and 12.3. Sorry, we obviously have some activity going on down in the car park, and that sounded very odd, what we've just heard. Yes. Okay. It is important that Council is able to address all of the business on the meeting agenda effectively and to allow members of the public to be heard on all agenda topics. Please allow me to highlight some key points to ensure the meeting proceeds in accordance with the town's meeting procedures and that members of the public are clear on how they can effectively participate in this meeting. This briefing session provides councillors with the opportunity to obtain and exchange information with town officers on items contained in the forthcoming ordinary council meeting agenda. The town is committed to ensuring that meetings are held and conducted in a safe environment, and any person attending this meeting is required to be respectful and courteous. Any unruly or disruptive behaviour will not be tolerated, and it might be that you can join the party downstairs that's apparently going on in the car park. Very unruly party down there, obviously. Any member of the public displaying such behaviour will be asked to leave the chamber, and which may result in the meeting being adjourned. No media or photos are to be taken in this chamber other than the town of Bassendean video and live streaming. No debate is undertaken by the council at briefing sessions, and no decisions are made on any agenda item during tonight's meeting. Public statement time and question time are each limited to 15 minutes. Only council members can request that this time be extended. I acknowledge that supplementary information for notice of motion 6 and 7 from the special meeting of electors in agenda item 12.3 has been received via direct email to councillors. This information will be considered by Council when making their decision at the Ordinary Council meeting on the 28th of April 2026. Before we go on to statement, question and deputations, please note the clock behind me, which allows you to note the timeline provided to you for statements. For instance, statements are 2 minutes long. We would ask that you don't go over time. Statements at the council briefing session must relate to an item on the OCM agenda being considered. Statements are to be directed to myself as presiding person, and we will be limited to 2 minutes, as I said. 15 minutes total is allocated for public statement time. As per the council briefing session policy, clause 5.6, if a person has made a deputation at this meeting, they are not permitted to make a public statement on the same matter. Now open for statement time. If you would like to make a statement, please put your hand up, step to the podium and make sure the red light is on for the microphone and clearly state your name and address. Do we have anyone who'd like to make a statement? Okay. So we will now move on to public question time, which is item 5.2 on the agenda. Questions at a council briefing must again relate to an item on the OCM agenda. You're entitled to ask up to 2 questions before other members of the public will be invited to ask their questions. 15 minutes will be allocated for questions by members of the public unless the council by resolution decide otherwise. As presiding person, I may accept or reject any question, with the decision being final. I may request the CEO to respond to a question, and I may also direct that the question be taken on notice. A written response will be provided by the town as soon as possible if a question is taken on notice. Again, if you have questions, I'd ask you to raise your hand, come to the podium, clearly state your name and address. Each question has a 2-minute timeline. Okay, so would you like to come to the podium and state your name and address? Thank you very much. And can we just make sure the microphone is on for you? So, there we go.
Again. Is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
Dr. Emily South, 22 Scadden Street in Bassendean.
So can I ask you just to direct directly into the microphone, because when you move sideways, we lose that voice.
Sorry.
Okay.
My first question is regarding 12.3 on the agenda. Given that the officer recommendations on item 12.3 substantially alter the language of decisions made unanimously by electors at the special meeting, will councillors commit to considering the original wording of those decisions on their merits rather than defaulting to the officer's recommendations?
I don't believe that any councillor can actually make that commitment at a briefing session. What a briefing session is to ask questions, evaluate information, and decision making is made at the OCM next week. And the OCM, I can't predict what councillors, each individual councillor will vote to do.
Okay. My second question is, given that the officer report states that the council has consistently and unanimously supported divestment of the direct service delivery of Willows, what specific steps will be taken by the town to ensure the process going forward is genuinely without favour, as the electors voted for, rather than a process that's already determined its destination?
So at the special meeting of electors, sorry, these are questions you've sent in by email. Correct? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the first divestment process was conducted without favour because it was conducted as per the regulations and the requirement to achieve market valuation. The next process will also be conducted, depending on a council resolution, without favour, but it'll also be limited to not-for-profit because that was one of the things that came out of the feedback from community members, that their preference was strongly for not-for-profit rather than for-profit operators. I also gave the guarantee at the special meeting of electors that all matters pertaining to this would be public, and that will be an ongoing process. Anything to do with this will be publicly available, every part of the information going forward. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
And who else? Okay, again, name and address.
Hi again, everybody. My name's Jenny Hudson. I live at 52 Walter Road East, Bassendean. I sent my questions in via email as well. Those of us with children currently enrolled in Willows have noticed some unsettling changes at the service since the special electors meeting. Can the administration and the council please explain why programs such as Beyond the Fence or Signing Hands and even excursions in general, which Willows has previously been very proud of, appear to have ceased or are now only being offered at the one location?
Okay, so I'm going to ask the officer to respond to you. So, our Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I'll just read out my response. There have been no changes to programmes or excursions following the SEM, and these continue as part of normal operations. Signing Hands is one of the ones you've asked about, concluded at the end of Term 4, December 2025, as part of a broader review of costs undertaken late last year. Beyond the Fence continues delivered within existing staffing ratios. Where programmes or excursions differ between locations, this is due to practical factors such as the age of the children, daily attendance levels, and how staffing is allocated to meet ratios, which can impact what activities can be offered on a given day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My second question, which will lead, I think, into what you've just answered. I think it's been made abundantly clear that we really value the ratios at Willows, which are above the bare minimum. We've also noticed some staff have sadly left, which, understandable, it's a very stressful time and they've got mortgages to pay. Is the town able to please explain why staff are not being replaced at a like-for-like basis in a proactive manner? Thanks.
Can I just ask, are these recent staff departures?
Yes, I believe there are definitely 2 staff members I can think of off the top of my head that have recently left.
So just as a comment from myself, I would suggest to you in a very tight labour market, it would be difficult to replace people in a very quick timeline, but that's just my opinion, having been in business myself. So in any case, Mr. CEO, would you like to address this, or shall I get the Director?
The Director has already provided a written response, so Amanda can read that out. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO and Mayor. I'll just respond direct. The town acknowledges that families value the higher education to child ratios provided at Wind in the Willows and remains committed to maintaining safe and compliant staffing levels at all times. There was a temporary reduction in staffing over the December period, which is traditionally a quieter time for the service, and staffing was managed accordingly to align with lower attendance. Since that time, staffing has been actively managed by the service leadership team to ensure ratios are met, including through careful rostering, use of relief staff where required, and direct support from senior staff on the floor. While some positions have not been replaced on a like-for-like basis, this reflects a more targeted approach to aligning staff with actual attendance patterns and operational needs, while continuing to meet all regularity requirements. The town is continuing to monitor staff levels, occupancy and service demand to ensure an appropriate balance between quality of care and financial sustainability.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I would ask if we've got anyone else in the audience who would like to ask a question. If you could raise your hand and come to the microphone. Noting that these questions and these responses will appear in the minutes of the meeting. Okay. So, Lucy. Not present. So I have some questions that have been submitted by a resident, and they will appear in the minutes of the meeting as well with the responses. Okay. Okay, so unless there are further questions, I will move on to deputations. And there are no further questions from anyone in the audience, correct? Okay, we'll move on to deputations, and we have a deputation from Mr. Campbell, and I'd ask you to come to the microphone and provide your deputation. Deputations are a maximum of 10 minutes long, and thereafter councillors will be able to ask questions if they so desire.
I hopefully won't go for 10 minutes, so it'll be much shorter. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, councillors. I'm here to speak in support of the advisory group proposed.
Yes, Can I ask
Bryce
you just,
Campbell, 17 Hardy
it's
Road,
just you're very
Bassendean.
soft when you move to
Sorry.
the side. So,
I'm here to speak in support of the advisory group proposed by the community. There appears to be a misunderstanding in the report about what an advisory group and what it is and what it does. Across Western Australia, councils routinely use advisory and reference groups in situations like this. They do not make decisions, they do not hold governance authority, and they do not create legal liability. They exist to provide structured, informed advice to council. That is exactly what is being proposed here. To address the concerns raised in the report, some community members have provided a draft terms of reference, which I've circulated earlier today. This clearly sets out the purpose, scope, governance and limits of the group. Importantly, it confirms three things. The group is advisory only. Council retains full decision-making authority. And all advice is considered transparently as part of your process. This is standard practice across local government. At the moment, there is no clear like-for-like assessment of all viable options relating to the future of Wind in the Willows, including a council-run model. There is also a clear gap between the pathway being presented and the community expectations. An advisory group is a practical way to resolve that and for relatively low cost. It allows options to be properly tested, assumptions to be made transparent, and the community to contribute constructively rather than reactively. Most importantly, it strengthens the credibility and defensibility of your decisions. Given the level of community concern, the credibility of this process from this point matters as much as the outcome. From this point forward, the process needs to be clearly seen as fair, balanced, and evidence-based. Supporting the advisory group does not take decision-making away from council. It improves the quality of the decisions you make. I encourage you to support the community's position. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
thank you. Councillors, Councillor Plifka.
Yeah, just a few governance-related questions in relation to this advisory group. Now, I understand, Bryce, that you've worked for the town of Bassendean before and you currently work for the City of Perth, so you're fairly familiar
Correct,
with local
yep.
government processes. So just in terms of the numbers that we're looking at on this advisory group. So the advisory group has the potential to have four parents. So it does allow for that. So where you can't find other community members, there would be four parents. So four members that would have a financial interest. You have the manager of Wind in the Willows, so similarly they would have a financial interest. So you would have 5 members of that committee that have financial interests and 4 that don't. Now, and you'd be familiar in local government, if a councillor or a member of the administration has a financial interest, that they can't participate in the decision making at all. It's not only that they can't vote, they can't canvass fellow councillors, they can't seem to influence that process in any way. How is it that you say that this advisory committee, comprised as you're suggesting, would comply with that well-established governance principle that people that have a financial interest cannot be part of the decision, and not the ultimate decision maker, but even have the ability to influence the ultimate decision maker?
Sure, it's a great question and thank you for asking it. Like all community reference groups, it's generally people who are interested in what is on that reference group joining it. The members that we've suggested are a suggestion. It would be up to council to determine who they would want to consult with in that matter. I guess parents as part of the service would be a good one to have in there, acknowledging that they would potentially have conflicts of interest around things like costs of the service. But I believe that those can be managed. Other community groups other reference groups have people on them that are users of services. So if you do a reference group for, say, a new aquatic facility, it would be generally expected that any member of the community would have a conflict because they may be service users of that service.
Not a financial conflict.
Or they'd contribute to it for rates and pay fees and charges to go there.
That's not a financial conflict. An interest in common. That's an interest in common.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry. Councillor Plifka, you have another comment?
No, I think the CEO's covered my next question, which was to ask about how that would those sorts of facilities, say an aquatic facility, which can, absolutely everybody in the town can use those facilities, so that would be the, as the CEO has said, an interest in common, whereas the number of people, the class of people that could use a childcare facility is more limited, so it wouldn't have that same scope as the use of an aquatic centre. So you would agree with that?
Yeah, I guess broadly they would have a conflict of interest here because they are using the service. Could I just bring some colleagues up here that have also worked on these terms of reference?
I'll defer to the CEO as to how this works.
Could you repeat that?
Sorry, these are the community members referenced that helped develop the terms of reference.
I don't, to be honest, Madam Mayor, I don't see how it's relevant. They've drafted a terms of reference. You've got it now for a week to help you inform your decision. We all know what an advisory group is. We've been in local government for a while, so we're not new to this. So I think councils can read the advisory group draft between now and the decision-making process.
Yeah. Just
to
further
let
that
you know,
point,
the councillors were provided with this late this afternoon, so not all councillors have probably read it yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just further to that point, I think
Excuse me, can we stop having interruptions from the audience? Either Bryce is speaking or you're speaking, so if we can hear Bryce first. Okay?
Yeah, the report talks about a committee of council. And that's not what the community. That's not what was proposed as part of that motion.
Okay.
And as a point of order, Madam Mayor, the time for the draft terms of reference was the special meeting of electors, not after the report is written, based on what we had the evidence to write it on. So it's probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks too late.
Sure, it was just a suggestion to help the process.
Okay. Okay. Councillors, are there further questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. So with that, we will go on to the reports, and I will... Okay. So we have a process. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a process, a local government process that's set down by the local government. The process is, as you've read the agenda, statements, questions, deputations. Now, I understand that you have an interest in this matter, but I would like to stick to the schedule and to the agenda item as it's written. And certainly we do have emails from many of you, and we do read all your emails, so we're well aware of your perspective on many items. So I would like to proceed to the agenda items without further interruption, if that's fine by everyone in the room. Thank you. So we'll go to the agenda items, and the first item is 12.2, and I would ask Mr. CEO if we have yourself or someone else speaking to this one.
I'd like the Director of Corporate Services to introduce the item to Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, CEO. Councillors. This report presents the outcomes of the local public notice process, which received 243 submissions and provides an update following the Council resolution on the 24th of March. The submission have been reviewed and a number of key items have been identified. There is a strong preference for a not-for-profit delivery model. There is a clear emphasis on maintaining quality of care and continuing for children and families. Concerns were raised regarding transparency and the consultation process. There is also recognition of the financial sustainability challenges associated with the current model. The current position at the moment is, in terms of that, is I will just step through where things are at. The disposal process has now ceased. The service is continuing to operate. As part of the 26-27 budget process, the service will be structured to operate without an ongoing subsidy. Fees and charges will be reviewed to support financial sustainability. Councillors has resolved to explore future service delivery options with a focus on attracting not-for-profit providers. Funding opportunities for future redevelopment are limited and competitive, with comparatively stronger access available for not-for-profit providers. The Council considerations: the need to move away from a subsidy operating model. Should Council still wish to transition out of direct service delivery, this should align with the community's preference for a not-for-profit delivery model. Future options and processes to be transparent. the officer's recommendation is outlined in the report.
Thank you. Mr CEO, are there other comments to this?
No, Madam Mayor, happy to take questions.
Okay. So, councillors, I'll open it up to questions. Okay. Can I just ask a question of the Director,
Yeah.
Corporate Services? I understand that the administration are working on fees and charges modelling at the moment. And it's my understanding, this might be one for you, Mr CEO, it's my understanding that that modelling will be brought back to the May meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Mayor, yes, to
Okay.
enable fees and charges to increase from 1 July.
Okay. Now, that's a fairly standard practice to actually bring the fees and charges to the May meeting, and the time I've been on council, to enable notification to the parents in a timely manner. But I would make it clear to the members of the audience that that will be coming to the May meeting. So, thank you. Councillors, are there any further questions on this item?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. The responses have been categorised. Did the responses not fall into multiple categories, though? Any of them?
Can you explain the
Like
question?
on sorry, I'll just find it again. There's a table that has key themes and findings, and it's got, 89 were private versus non-profit, 49 were childcare quality, the public consultation. How were they grouped into those categories? Did none cross over?
Through the councillor and through the mayor, we actually went through a full process to do this, and how we came up with the themes of the major themes, and these were the major themes that was actually how we came up with the category. So it was quite clear when we were reading every single item that that's where they came under. So there wasn't just myself looking at it, we had multiple people checking it and double checking it and triple checking it to make sure there was independence and to ensure that we actually captured the proper themes. But when you were reading them, it was all the same themes. We called it themes, you can call it whatever you like, but it's yeah.
Councillor Palifka?
Just in terms of the database, so that we have the largest number of not-for-profit providers, does that database include community-based not-for-profit providers?
Sorry, you'll have to repeat that question. I didn't follow that.
So not-for-profit providers, they can come from anywhere. Does the database take into account a not-for-profit provider which is comprised of community members? Okay,
so let me clarify for that. There was some approaches from not-for-profits during the consultation period, and the administration have said that they have made a database of those encounters, for lack of a better word, and that should there be a future process, that they will be invited to participate. Now, my understanding is that there was an email from Cara, I think it was, and I believe that that is going to be included in if there's any future EOI, it would include all of those entities.
Yeah, that was my question, just to make sure they were included, so happy with that.
So I just want to check with the CEO that that is correct, that my answer is correct.
That is correct, Madam Mayor, yes. Cara Kennedy is on that database.
Okay. So just to follow up with a question on that, if there was an EOI process, then it would be a level playing field in that all the information would be publicly available and that all of those entities would have access to the identical information, correct?
Correct, Madam Mayor. Unlike the first approach, which was through an expression of interest to a database, and that database was kept confidential until council resolved to go through to a due diligence period once an offer was accepted which met market valuation. This approach will be...
The offer was not accepted.
The offer was accepted subject to
Subject to.
due diligence, and then it was withdrawn. So council had accepted an offer but hadn't made a decision to proceed. So there's
Okay.
a...
Okay, so
So this process will be an expression of interest out into the ether with no secret database. This will be a public process, so inviting every not-for-profit across Australia that has an interest in childcare and the ability to meet whatever scope of works that we decide with council is relevant. Obviously, council will need to make a future decision around market valuations, because the Act is quite clear that if you are seeking a disposal, you need a valuation that's current, and you need to understand, if you don't go with a provider that can meet the market valuation, why you choose not to choose the provider with the best market approach.
okay. Okay, and that will be subject to future council. The scope of works would be subject to a future council review, I guess would be the word. Okay. Right, councillors. Councillor Polifka?
Just to clarify the language on that, so is it correct to say that the town received an offer, so didn't accept an offer, but received an offer, and it was upon receiving that offer that this consultation process was enlivened?
Yeah, the process is clear. We received an offer. We went through due diligence to check both parties whether the offer was going to stand up after the due diligence period of looking at accounts. That offer was to come back to council after the public submission period. Council would need to show due regard for the public submissions and then make a decision about whether they accept the offer.
Yeah, so in that process, there was never any risk of a decision being made without the community's input.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillors, further questions? Okay, we will go on to item 12.3. Again, I would ask Director of Corporate Services if you would provide an overview of this one.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors. This report represents the decision from the special meeting of electors held on the 25th of March 2026. 7 decisions were carried by the electors and are now presented for council's consideration. Each decision has been reviewed by administration with comments and recommendations provided. It is important to note that decisions of electors are not binding on council. Council is required to consider them, but must make decisions based on legislative requirements, governance obligations, financial and resourcing implications, and the best interest of all ratepayers now and into the future. I will briefly summarise the key positions. Decision 1, the advisory group. It's not supported due to governance, compliance and resourcing implications. Decision 2, future operating model, no sale. The intent is acknowledged. The officer recommendation is to support this as an amended form, focusing on continuing operations of the service for 12 months, achieving a financial sustainable model for the next financial year under direct management and for the longer under a not-for-profit model, which is to be explored and further reports presented, and develop a transparent process for any future divestment options, noting previous feedback. Decision 3, transparency policy. It's not supported as legislative requirements already provide this framework and they operate at a higher level of accountability than a council policy. Decision 4, consultation policy. IAP2, acknowledged with existing engagement frameworks already in place. Decision 5, the apology, acknowledged and is already on the public record. Decision 6, the EOI MMJ process. It is not supported based on the officer assessment. Decision 7, communications FAQ concerns, not supported based on the officer assessment. On my closing here, detailed officer comments and recommendations are provided against each decision in the report for the council's considerations.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have questions on this particular item? So I'm just give me a minute. I need to find the page again.
May I ask a question?
Sorry. Apologies. I was looking on. Can't find. I didn't highlight it. Sorry, Councillor John.
For decision 3, in terms of transparency, council could make a decision to, for example, put in a policy to only have confidential items that are legislatively required, if it chose. Is that correct?
So, Mr. CEO, if you don't mind, or would you like to answer this?
I would like the opportunity. And
Yep,
then,
yep.
So under the new reform process, that is actually legislation. So the current options that we have had around keeping things confidential based on a guideline are now stricter, and some of those practices will now fall away because they won't pass the new transparency tests under the reform process. So it's particularly around commercial confidence and staff and employment issues are the two things. Some of the practices of the past, even with our tendering process, will need to be handled slightly differently. Whilst we protect commercial and confidence information can be done through a redaction or through an attachment, the report itself should be more fulsome so that the people can understand exactly what is transpiring through our council decision process.
Yes, Councillor John.
So in effect, it would no longer be a discretionary confidentiality, it would be legislated by the Local Government Act.
So the process that we undertook with the recent disposal process would still have been confidential around the protecting the purchaser and financial valuations, because that would preclude anybody else from having the opportunity to go or understand commercial valuations. But the process of council having those particular council decisions prior now would come into question prior to making the ultimate decision. But once you have commercial and confidence information from M&J, Char Group, those things need to be protected.
Okay. I would note that the administration have been, you will note, Councillor John, that there have been reports that have been public where just the attachment has been confidential. So there has been a move in that direction anyway. Certainly I've noticed that in the last few months. So I do understand exactly what the CEO has stated, and we have actually discussed this as well, the move and transitioning period now that the legislation is changing. So thank you. Councillors, further questions? And I'm going to leave my question because I can't find the paragraph I was after. So, councillors, if we've got no further... Councillor John?
I'll just indicate I'll probably have some in writing for you throughout the week.
Yep. And councillors, as you know, you can put any question in writing before the publication of the OCM documents at the end of the week. So long as you do that in a timely fashion, that would be very much appreciated. So, councillors, we now move on to 12.3, resolution of council tree canopy replacement. And I would ask if the officers would like to provide a... Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to provide the outcomes of an investigation that was completed following a resolution of council.
Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. Have a good night.
So it's following on from a resolution of council from December, where council asked us to investigate options to increase planting ratios and the minimum sizes for replacement trees, relating both to regulated trees, so trees on private property, and street and reserve trees. So it's a combined report. The Part A, which relates to regulated trees, is from Development and Regulation. And then Part B relates to street and reserves trees, relates to environment and sustainability. So some of the key points relating to planting ratios. So for regulated trees, there's no specific ratio. The guidelines are in the local planning policy are followed, and that current policy is due to be reviewed towards the end of 2026. For street and reserve trees, that's outlined in our council policy for street and reserve trees. So the current minimum ratio is 1 removed, 2 replaced, but that's the minimum ratio. There's also the option and discretion to charge the amenity value, which for a more established tree could be tens of thousands of dollars. And also, so the situations where the replacement tree planting is applied is outlined in the report. And generally, it's a last resort where the development can't be altered to avoid impacting the tree. So we have considered options to change the ratio. So for example, the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions has a higher ratio for trees on the river park, which is 1 removed, 3 replaced. And we did think that increasing the ratio for more established trees, so the minimum ratio would be relevant. So we're proposing 2 different scales. So for a younger tree that's been planted in the last 3 years, the same ratio would continue, so 1 removed, 2 replaced. And for larger trees, that would be increased in line with the DBCA ratio. There's quite a few comments in the report. The other change that's happening is the value of the streetscape contribution fee is reviewed annually with the annual fees and charges. And because this year we're reviewing the overheads, it's likely that that will reduce. So it's currently $3,100. So if 1 tree was being removed, the minimum fee would be $6,200 to replant 2 new trees. We are thinking the new fee will change to approximately $789. And then, so there would be a similar cost impact if the changes were introduced from next financial year. The other comment is the planting of the replacement trees doesn't have to be on the same verge. If there's insufficient space, they are already planted elsewhere throughout the town as part of the winter tree planting program, and the funds are still charged. So the applicant, the developer or the property owner is still required to pay the streetscape contribution fee. The option of tree bonds was also considered, but there's various limitations with that. The main issue is if the property owner fails to plant the tree or it doesn't survive, there's a delay before a new replacement tree can be planted, plus also the extra administration involved with collecting the bond, returning it and monitoring the tree. The age of the trees was another part of the resolution of council. So the size of the trees. At the moment we plant 30 or 35 litre trees, and they're the most suitable size for planting in the streetscape. They often, there's more variety of species available. They are less likely to be root bound, and they can also be planted a lot quicker without the requirement for machinery. So for example, if we were to plant larger trees, we might need a mini excavator, which would increase traffic management requirements. So overall, the officer recommendation is to amend the Street and Reserve Trees Council policy at the next council meeting to bring in the new replacement planting ratios for street and reserve trees, to continue to plant 30 to 35 litre trees, to include some extra reporting through the CEO bulletin. At the moment, we report if a tree's about to physically be removed, but we can also include a report at the time of when the development approval is issued, because there can be a 2-year delay between that's issued and when the tree's removed. Regarding regulated trees, because of the time involved and resourcing implications, the recommendation is to wait until the scheduled review of the local planning policy, which is the end of 2026, depending on resources, to include specific changes. There's also further information in the report saying any changes to that policy need to be consistent with the R codes and also may need state government approval. Another comment in the report is relating to the fees associated with development applications for regulated trees. That's been waived for the first 18 months of the changes to the policy, while people become more aware, and to try and incentivise applications if people are planning to consider work on trees. However, there is a fair amount of resources involved with assessing those. So there's another part of the officer recommendation to remove that fee waiver. So based on the value of the works, the approximate cost for the application would be $147. So I'm happy to answer questions mainly about street and reserve trees. For questions on regulated trees, we might need to take that on notice.
Councillor Plivka.
Oh, thank you very much. Mine's a general question about replacement of dead and diseased trees. Is there a particular scheduled time to do this, or is it as needed?
So, thanks through the Mayor. At the moment, it's based on the level of risk. So if the tree is at risk of losing a limb or is a hazard, it's prioritised. Otherwise, we do try and remove it before the next winter planting season, but it's mainly based on budget availability as well.
Follow-up question to that. Does that mean it could a dead tree could stay on a verge for 2 years?
Through the Mayor, usually not, and we're trying to prioritise more faster response for that.
Yeah, because of the aesthetic as well as the
because when the dead tree is removed, that's another space for a potential new tree. And the sooner we can get new trees in the ground, the quicker the canopy can be replaced.
Last question. So would they, any tree that is removed from the verge, could there be 2 trees planted? Or is it prescribed to just replace?
Through the Mayor, it's dependent on the available verge space. So, and also the replacement species. It could have room for 2 smaller trees rather than 1 large species, but it all depends on the specific location.
Councillor Plivka.
Yeah, nice to be talking about trees. I mean, an important thing. It'll be around in 50, 100 years' time. When it comes to what we're talking about here, so the street and reserve tree policy, that the only obviously in council reserves, the only people that are going to be removing those would be ourselves. When it comes to the verge, though, is that what we're really talking about in terms of the interaction with residents?
Yes, we haven't yet had an example where there's been a request to remove a street tree, a reserve tree. So this is
Well, conceivably
usually...
someone could do that. They could say, the tree in the park across the road I'd like removed.
No.
Surely not, no.
So with street trees, it's generally when a proposed crossover
Yeah.
is in conflict with an existing street tree. That's generally the situation where it comes up through a development application.
And in terms of the trees that are less than 3 years old, so the size is irrelevant when it's on the verge. It's only the size only matters when it's, I suppose, a regulated tree on the private property itself. Whereas for here, all we're talking about is the age as opposed to the size of the tree.
Through the Mayor, for the table, the minimum replacement ratio, yes. However, the size and the age would influence whether we charge the amenity value in addition to the replacement planting costs.
Okay, and in terms of the process, so say somebody wanted a tree removed that didn't have to be removed immediately, are residents able to take a staged approach where rather than planting the small tree, well, remove the large tree, plant the small tree, are they able to put the small tree in place, let it grow for a while, and then remove the larger tree so that it has some time to make up what will be the lost canopy?
Through the Mayor, the town undertakes the removal work and replacement planting if it's a street tree. Generally, if it's to do with development, the development on the lot or on the verge would negatively impact any recently planted tree. So usually we don't undertake the planting until after the development's completed, the works on the verge.
I suppose I'll add some context to that. So say that somebody on their verge has a non-native tree and they are minded to have their verge populated with native trees. If they were to plant or have arranged for the native tree to be planted, could that be there for some time prior to the non-native tree being removed so that there's that continuity of canopy?
Just wanted to clarify, is there the tree, what's the reason for them wanting the tree removed? Is it to do with development?
No, so not development related. They simply are of the view that they'd like the town to be populated with native as opposed to introduced species.
Currently, that's not a reason where the
Okay.
town would consider removal of a tree.
Okay, that clarifies. Thanks.
So, if I can ask a question, I'm more interested in the removal of regulated trees on private property, which tend to be significant trees over 8 metres in height, over 6 metres in canopy width. And when we lose those trees, we certainly lose significant canopy cover. Now, at the moment, the way it's stated in the planning, the local planning policy, oh, sorry, not the local planning policy, there is no requirement for the property owner. If they get approval at the moment to remove a regulated tree, there's no requirement for them to plant a replacement tree. Is that correct?
Based on what's written in the report, that is considered the proposed replacement planting as part of the application.
Yeah, that's...
So yes, but I would have to take
But
that
it's
on notice.
considered, but what I'm getting at, is it required? That's my question. So I'm happy for it to be taken on notice, okay? Okay, councillors, further questions on this item? Okay, so we will move to 12.5, which is the Walga revised climate change advocacy position. Ms Davey, is this one
Yeah.
yours? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the purpose of this report is for Council to consider Walga's revised climate change advocacy position. So they've asked for Council endorsed feedback by the 1st of May. And there's an attachment which provides further background information. The town and council have previously been supportive of Walga's position on climate change, and we also recognise the risks through a risk register and have a corporate emissions reduction strategy. So the officer recommendation is for council to support the Walga's proposed statement just as they've provided it with no changes.
Thank you. Councillors, questions? Okay, we'll move on to 12.6, schematic designs, Jubilee Reserve pavilions. Yep. And Ms Davey, thank you very much. Have a good night. Did you want to sit in Councillor Ames' position? Yeah. Yeah. And if someone could move the microphone closer, that would be excellent. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors and member of the gallery. Community in Place has a few reports to present tonight, so I'll just work through them. And also note that I've got the Manager of Community Services here this evening in case there's any questions that I might not be able to answer. So first of all, I'd like to introduce the item on the redevelopment of the Jubilee Club Rooms. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm on the right page here. So this evening we're seeking council, well not tonight, but this report is seeking council endorsement of the schematic designs for progression to detailed design for both the Stan Moses Pavilion and also the Caledonian Club Rooms. This follows from the concept plans that were adopted at February Council and is for council to endorse the schematic design options for both these clubs. The schematic designs are the outcome of a strong engagement process with the clubs through March, which has resulted in some further refinement. And to recap that briefly, Stan Moses, as presented at the February meeting, will be a new building in front of the existing building with only a few minor changes from the concept. This includes realignment of the kitchen/kiosk, which in turn has meant adjustment to change rooms. And there's also a building compliance matter with the number of doors. The Caledonians when it was presented in February, was an proposed extension to the existing building, incorporating some additional spaces, including more male toilets, universal access toilets, referee and first aid room, additional storage and an office. Changes from concept to schematic include the following changes that were at the club's request. That includes no formal entrance at Northmore Road, relocation of the kiosk into the extended space area, conversion of the external accessible storerooms into change room compliant spaces for future change rooms. In other words, there will be storage for the time being and then progress to change rooms at a later date when needed. This does represent a slight change to this concept presented in February, but it is the club's preference. It equates to a slight expansion in footprint, but the advice from the architects is that this will not substantially change the cost as it's currently presented in the QS. And just a reminder that this project is supported by state and federal funding, and then we'll have some additional municipal funding in due course. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, so councillors, I'll ask if you've got questions. Can I just ask the entrance Caledonians, was a really...
Sorry, everybody's got paid plans in front of them, just in case you weren't aware.
Let's start with Stan Moses so we know which plan we're talking to. That's Caledonia.
Yep. So can I ask the items that are being removed, like the little athletics and things like that, like the car park, I understand, but the little athletics, is there potential to look for grant funding that might actually assist in delivering that? Because it seems a shame for them to miss out.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, just might throw to the manager, but the plan was never for a group to miss out. So.
Yeah, I didn't mean it like that, but you know what I'm saying, to deliver it in a timely fashion. I was thinking about whether there was potentially grant funding that could assist in that process. So that's where my question's coming from.
Yeah, through the chair, Madam Mayor. Yeah, there's no issue with looking for grant funding. If that's available, then we can look into that. The report at the moment details that no user group misses out, but we would capture those projects as future capital works projects.
Yeah.
And that's detailed in the report, but happy to look at any option that expedites those facilities.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillors, further questions? Councillor Polifka?
Yep, so still on Stan Moses, the club room, on the previous design we have the roof orientation. What will the roof look like for the club room?
So on the screen, that's the Caledonians one on the screen.
I was talking about Stan Moses.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not sure that we have that level of detail yet. I'll just confirm with the manager, but I think that's still under discussion.
Yeah, through the chair, Madam Mayor, for Stan Moses, we're just talking about Stan Moses at the moment. To my knowledge, there's no change to the roof lining that was originally designed, but we can take that on notice. I think we would get more detail at the next stage of the process. But Stan Moses is a more simple build because it's a fresh build from new.
I mean, the club room's got a ground area of it's a large open room, 150 odd square metres. Just trying to work out whether the ceiling will be flat or whether there'd be provision for a raked ceiling, because given how large it is, if the ceiling height's low, it could seem quite claustrophobic, I should think.
Madam Mayor, through the Mayor, I think in the next detailed design stage we'll be able to report back on some of those details.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councillors, do you have any questions on Stan Moses? Otherwise, we'll move on to the Caledonian design. Can I ask a question, Mr. CEO? With the more detailed design, is there any potential to perhaps bring it to the councillors in a workshop so that we can keep abreast of where they're at and whether it might be easier to actually get feedback as you go along. And I'm wondering how hard that is.
No, good question, Madam Mayor, and that would be our preference, and I think we might ask the architect to come in and do a workshop at the schematic stage.
Okay.
Given the time of the year and the budget workshops and our need to keep this process moving to meet our deadlines, but as soon as we adopt the budget in June, things free up quite a bit, so we could be taking, we could have the architect run a workshop.
If I can make a comment to that, Mr. CEO, I think councillors are so interested in this particular project that they would make time for you. But anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, could do it at Monday on a 10 o'clock, might suit. Yeah, we'll be there. Okay, councillors, do you want to go on to Caledonians? Councillor Polifka.
Yeah, so on Caledonian, just trying to work out where it says existing store and then there's a notation about how that's being built. Is that internal area or is that something else?
Madam Mayor, through the chair. So that's an existing storeroom and it currently houses services to the building. When the first iteration, which was the design, went to the clubs and we had our second consultation phase, they were really strong that they needed to retain that. And so the architects walked through that and looked at how it would function. So short answer to your question is it's an existing building and it needs some tidying up, but it's a critical piece of infrastructure that ultimately there's savings if that is retained as well.
Okay, so that's brought under that roof line. And in terms of entry to that area, will it have entry or is it an enclosed structure?
Through the chair. So yeah, it'll be brought under a roof line, but there was originally an entry on Northmore, and that needs to be deleted with this schematic concept. And the main entry would then be at the front of the building where you can see the veranda is.
Yes, I see that.
Yeah.
But just in terms of coming back to that, where it says existing store, so you've got the storeroom, which has got 14 square metres. There's a door coming into that, which makes sense. But then this other bounded area, which it says existing store in the middle, but it's bounded by walls on all four sides. Is it intended to have entry to that, or is that an enclosed space?
No, at the moment, Madam Mayor, through the chair, it's closed off and there's entry into that store there. That's it. But these things are changeable.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
So can I ask a question? Clearly you're building an extension onto the Caledonians and you've got this older part of the building that's got to be retained. I'm assuming that the exterior of the entire complex will be upgraded to a degree so it looks attractive.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there needs to be some external treatment, but part of the challenge here is keeping this on our on budget. Yep. And on time. So with this slight extension, which equates to 14 square metres to the north, we do need to be conscious of all treatments. And at the moment, we're trying to stay on budget, but we will do some sort of treatment, but it perhaps wouldn't be as was in the original design piece.
It's just I'm aware of what that store looks like currently and it's awful. So,
yeah. I've been through there a few times lately. I also agree. But we have talked to the architect about how we could refresh that, so it will be done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For you, Mr Warner, the point 3 of your recommendation is that to remove the cost of all loose furniture and equipment and that they then become the responsibility of the respective clubs. Is there an understanding of the capacity of these respective... I'm sorry, I'm talking to the wrong person. Whoever. The capacity of these respective clubs to actually provide that level?
Yeah, through the chair, the consultation and the dialogue with the club is ongoing. It hasn't stopped for months and months and months. So as we make budget adjustments, we have to talk to the clubs. And that's something that we think that is fair for them to pay for as we're doing larger renovations, in this case an extension of 14 square metres, we think that's a fair negotiation and we don't foresee any problems with that.
Okay, thank you very much.
So again, would it not be something that the clubs could hunt for grant funding themselves, given that there is quite a bit of funding out there for sporting groups at the moment? So would the town assist them in perhaps identifying grants that might facilitate these internal furnishings that you're looking at?
Yeah, through yourself, Madam Mayor, yeah, that's certainly on the radar. We already have one club who's made a commitment to finding their own resourcing already.
Yep.
And so if we found grants or we could assist in the community services space, we might be able to help with, grant workshops or supporting the clubs when the time's right.
Okay. So thank you for that. Councillors, are there any other questions on this? I'd like to thank the CEO and the staff for their progress on this, and also the clubs for their cooperation, because it's very helpful that everybody's on the same page to get the best outcomes. So we'll move on to 12.8, RFT Bassendean Oval. And Mr CEO, would you like to?
Madam Mayor, I'll ask the Director of Community in Place.
So this report,
Oh, hang on, have you missed it?
oh, sorry. Palmerston Square. Yes, I did miss that. Okay, sorry about that. Director of Community in Place.
Thank you very much. So it's my pleasure to present this recommendation to the briefing this evening, and the purpose of the report is to endorse the recommended concept design for commissioning of artwork at Palmerston Square. This project is fully funded by developer contributions that have been held in trust and accrued since 2012. And the locations for the artwork were endorsed by council in September 23, and the order and process for commissioning works were endorsed by council in March 2025. The selection process has followed the national guidelines or codes of practice, and the recommended artwork that we're presenting, hopefully you've all had a chance to have a look at it in the attachment. It's titled Friends Rock. I'm going to hope I pronounce this artist's name correctly, Amy Prejean Capone, in collaboration with Penny Ferguson, and it's a sculptural installation and was the highest scoring submission because of being unique, reflective of the site, includes sustainable design elements, is responsive to the Bassendean natural environment, and will serve as a joyful landmark mirroring friendship, community, native biodiversity. My own personal view is that it's a clever, funny piece of work that will contribute in a dynamic way to the park area. I think, is there anything else? That is all. So if there's any questions.
I have a question. The material used, particularly for the little figures on top, with their upraised arm or wing or whatever you like to call it, are they actually resistant to being broken off?
It's a good question. Look, they're doing everything they can to make sure that none of that happens. You would have seen in their design, they've got the concrete rods through with the concrete footings and so forth. But yes, those little pieces. They've used cast iron and other textural surfaces that should be preventable. I'm sure they're fully aware of the risks, and they will have managed those risks with the sort of materials that they've used. But I do know some of the textures include cast iron.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's good. I realised that they would have used the metal rods through the rocks. I realised that. And even the figures themselves, most of that would be very solid. I was just interested in the little arms and about, how resistant they are to kids swinging off them. So anyway, thank you very much. Councillors, further questions?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, in terms of when we assess playgrounds and the like, we take into account how children will interact with them. So in terms of a weight that they could withstand, I'm going to assume a child maybe up to about 30 kilograms before they become sensible enough to not do that. So have we tested it in some way?
They undertake a rigorous risk management process to make sure it's appropriate for the environment and the use. So yes.
And one question I had, slightly related, in that particular playground they had affixed to the trees these little fairy doors historically, and some of those seem to have gone by the wayside. Is there any ability to look at that in the future?
We'll take that on notice.
Right, thank you.
Okay. If I could ask one more question, noting the approval by council for the different sites for art, are the other areas going to come to council in due course?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in the March report of last year, we outlined the staged process, one per annum, with the next one being Park Street, I think. But having said that, in the scope of works that we put out, we allowed for them to happen more quickly, should that be achievable. So that will basically depend on resource and capacity. But the plan at this point is one per year, and the next one for Park Street is budgeted as a proposed budget item for 26-27.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, further questions? Okay, we'll move on to 12.8. Okay. Which is actually
12.8, it will be presented at Ordinary Council.
Yeah, sorry, I'm clearly off with the fairies. Okay, 12.9, Bassendean Local Emergency Management Committee, 11th of March. The report's self-explanatory.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So there's a couple of different elements to this council report. Firstly, is to adopt the minutes that have not been adopted for a few meetings, simply because they hadn't been tabled at the committee meeting so that they could come to this meeting. So that's a bit of a tidy up and housekeeping element, and there's 3 sets of minutes to consider there. I would probably add that most of those are very straightforward, and there's probably no need to go through any of the particular items. The other element to this report is to consider the proposal to amalgamate Bassendean and Bayswater Local Emergency Management Committees, in line with the recommendation to do so from both committees, and our previous report on this matter back in, I think, March last year. So the proposal to merge is a way to improve our emergency management effectiveness and efficiency. It proposes to combine resources, knowledge and personnel to streamline operations, increase collaboration, improve emergency management effectiveness and create efficiencies such as reduced duplication, improved communication, broader coverage across municipal boundaries, and ultimately a better emergency management planning and response framework. The 2 committees believe that it also reflects the high level of cooperation and interaction that already exists between the 2 local governments, and the steps from here, if approved, an amalgamation working group will be established and convened. The working group will explore and agree to administrative and reporting arrangements, membership protocols and so on. Then a report would be prepared to bring back to the respective councils recommending the amalgamation along the proposed arrangements. But very key to this evening is that this goes and next week's decision-making process is that this can't proceed with the agreement of both councils. Bayswater is presenting theirs tonight as well, and are similarly recommending that we proceed with an amalgamation. I'm happy to take questions.
Councillors, Councillor Polifka?
I seem to recall that this had been discussed before and was agreed at the local emergency management committee level by both Bassendean and Bayswater. But on the previous occasion, I think the Bayswater Council was not minded to do that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. Under a previous council at Bayswater, they weren't supportive, but with the advent of a new council at the City of Bayswater, they've, this is bad English, but re-raised the issue. And so hence it's coming to both local governments again.
Okay, so then there's a prospect of Bayswater agreeing to the amalgamation with Bassendean's Local Management Emergency Committee.
And nothing else.
And nothing else.
And nothing else.
Okay. Councillors, 1210 is the contract variations approvals, which have some three particular discussion points. So Mr. Asmus is coming forward. Miss- Welcome
evening.
to the decision-making table.
Thank you very much. You're very important here. Thanks for staying. Evening, councillors. So this report is seeking council approval to or approve three variation requests that's come through to the town formally. One is for our verge collection services, the other one is for our street sweeping, and the other is for the current supply of asphalt. The reason why these requests have come through is obviously to do with the what's happening in the world at the moment with the conflict, but also because the variation amounts requested, being more than 5% of the contract value, require council approval based on the delegated authority. So typically the CEO can approve less than 5%. These variation requests, which are around 15%, require council approval. Important to note also that we're recommending, if council does approve, that approval is only till June 30, and that's really because of the potential change in nature of what's happening here. And I think with that being 2.5 months limits the amount, I guess, and we can reassess after that point in time. So it's only been the three, and one in particular, which is the asphalt, that has the highest variation amount. But we've completed our asphalt program, so we don't expect to be needing any asphalt for the next 4 or 5 months. So really at this stage it's the street sweeping and the verge collection service that's impacted up until June 30, which is the approval request.
Okay, so if I can ask a question. If we're approving this to June 30, and then obviously we've got a budget program that we're looking at approving in June, which will include, no doubt, some roads and asphalt for the coming 26-27 financial year. Do you anticipate, if you're entertaining an increase of almost 50% in bitumen products, do you anticipate that that will go down? Because if we're doing budget preparations now for roads and bitumen for the next financial year, would we not have to factor that additional cost into our budgeting and our rates?
Yes, certainly, Madam Mayor, it's a good question. We typically do our asphalt program, and most councils do around about starting from November onwards. In fact, this year we completed our program between November and December. So my hope is that if we maintain a program like that, then by November, again, it's a hope, we don't know, I'm hoping that by then the asphalt rates go down. That's all I can say at this point in time. But we certainly won't be proceeding to do any asphalt while the rate's so high.
So if we approve this to June 30, what I'm trying to ascertain now is, and if you're not going to do the program until November, I'm trying to ascertain what we're looking at between July 1st and November. Are you going to actually work on these higher values as the potential highest costs, or are you going to just put those projects as a question mark in our budget? We're going to have to allocate something.
Yeah, so the proposal is, and as per the capital program we presented to the workshop, I think was it March, the estimates or the budget amounts are based on I guess previous asphalt quantity amounts.
Yeah.
So they are at the moment too high for proceeded, but as I say, we won't proceed. And these projects are renewal road projects, so they're not dire. The roads will last. Roads won't collapse. So if we have to put it off even till after Christmas, it's not the end of the world. It's not an operational maintenance requirement, and they can wait. So the fingers crossed that we do wait for that period of time and we can have the rates restored to what they were.
Okay. Councillor Polivka.
Just having a look at the table, so the top line item increase, the 15%, whilst diesel is less than $2 a litre, and then the bottom line, you have 15% increase. Is it possible that that could be framed in the same way as the first line item? Because it seems that both of those relate to the cost of diesel. And if diesel were to come back down to under $2 a litre, then you would hope that 15% increase would fall away. So are we able to ask for the same treatment on the increase for the first supplier, for that same treatment to apply to the third supplier?
You're referring to which particular service, Councillor
You've got
Polivka?
Western Maize.
Western
and
Maize?
Yes, so
Okay.
And
to use their
EnviroPath.
names, yes, Western Maize and EnviroPath. So I'm saying the Western Maize increase seems to be quite equitable in that it says that if petrol or diesel comes back under 2 litres, that would cease to apply, that 15% increase. Would it not be reasonable for us to seek a similar provision in the EnviroPath agreement?
Yes, definitely. And bearing in mind, like I said, the approval I'm seeking is till June 30 anyway. But certainly that was always the intent. And both contractors provided evidence around fuel prices, which we all see anyway. But that could be certainly applied to them as well.
And look, I'm sure that if it goes down under 2 litres, they'll be ecstatic. $2 a litre, they'll be ecstatic as well. In terms of the bitumen, so you mentioned that we could hold that off. How much resilience do we have? What number of years could we potentially defer that to if need be?
Yeah, it's hard to say that this year, well, 26, 27, we've got our large MRAG project. And certainly it'd be nice to do because it's 2/3 funded by the state. So, but again, that's not planned until November. The other projects listed for next year's program are access streets or small streets. They're ageing, they're 40, 50 years old, but they certainly won't collapse within a year. Renewal projects are around preventing that from happening, but there's certainly safety there. So, very worst case, we don't do those projects until 2027 calendar year. That's not the end of the world.
I just ask, because obviously this is caused by a current war in the Middle East. There was a war in Ukraine that was meant to last for 2 weeks. If you ask the Russians, it's still going 4 years later. Do we have potential to go up to, say, 2 years before we would have to do these things again?
Probably have to do an assessment. I think we probably can. Like I say, the roads on next year's program, without going too detailed, are already 50 years old and they haven't collapsed. We don't have much bitumen on them without getting too technical. They need to be resurfaced for renewal, but they probably could. Bearing in mind, my understanding, without again getting too caught up in the politics, is that with the war in Ukraine, it didn't affect the commodity prices.
No, I wasn't suggesting. It was just to give an example that once you start a war, you don't know how long it'll go for. They tend to be unruly beasts.
Okay. So, councillors, no more questions? Okay. We'll move on. Now, the next item, 12.11, if you've got any queries about the accounts paid, please put them in writing to the Director of Corporate Services and you will get a response. Then we've got 12.12, which is the monthly financial report. And I would ask the Director of Corporate Services, did you want to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, it's just a standard report. There's not much change from the previous month. This report is just a snapshot of how we're tracking. March results are largely in line with budget, noting timing differences. Variances mainly relate to capital timing and materials and contracts. There's not been any compliance issues, and the focus remains on financial sustainability heading into the 26-27 budget. So there's no major flags coming this month.
Okay. So, councillors, any questions on that? Okay, we'll move to 12.13, which is Audit and Governance Committee. Pretty straightforward, but I'll ask if there's anything you would like to highlight on that one. No? Audit and Governance, nothing? Nothing? Okay, councillors, any questions on that one? Okay, we move to 12.14, Council Plan Quarterly Report. And Mr CEO, did you wish to...
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I might ask the Manager of Governance to provide an update on this report for councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and CEO. Yeah, the quarterly report covers the quarter January through to March. In the report, you'll see that in the comments, we put some key takeouts from the quarter 3 report. 30 council plan projects already been completed from 2023-24 and 24-25. There's a high number of projects identified as on track. Further 7 projects have not yet commenced, with 3 of these to be included in budget planning for the next financial year, and a further 4 either not scheduled due to financial constraints or to be included in future considerations, and they're noted in the table in the report. We've also put some notable actions which are due to be completed in quarter 4, and the references are there for you to look at, and the 3 actions which are currently under monitor and review. So all in all, quite when you have a holistic look at the council plan, we are actually tracking quite nicely as far as what's been achieved in 3 of the 4 years. Yeah, and pretty much I'll leave it at that for any questions.
Councillors, are there any questions on this item? Okay. Well, that concludes the reports, and I will declare this meeting closed at what looks like 26 minutes past 7, and the next ordinary council meeting will be held on Tuesday, the 26th of May. No, that's not right. Okay. So, I think it's the 28th of April.
28th.
Yes, sorry. I was just reading straight off, so apologies for that. And that will commence at 6 p.m. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are concluded this meeting, and we'll just wait for the recording to be turned off.
I think both are yours.